On to the agribusiness chat with Jinmi Ajayi, and today we have a guest who's going to be talking to us about nutrition. She's a nutrition expert, and she's delivered quality messages and content from Africa to other parts of the world. Please introduce yourself to us.
Hi everyone, my name is Nduta Wambura. I am a dietitian nutritionist originally from Kenya, and I speak a lot about nutrition security over my social media handles. I run a platform known as Ask the Nutritionist, whereby I do a lot of nutrition education to different populations and individuals, teaching them about nutrition, and I'm also very conversant with issues to do with food security and malnutrition, especially in Africa. Of course, hailing from Kenya and having seen the issues going and looming in the country, I do attest to the fact that this is a great time to actually start speaking about food security and malnutrition and how we can navigate this through. Especially with the pandemic that is definitely going to cause us a setback towards the goal to achieve zero hunger by 2030. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much, Jinmi, for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Nduta. Okay, so we'll go straight to the topic of the day, nutrition in a post-COVID sub-Saharan Africa. So according to the World Vision, 20% of the African population are actually experiencing hunger, especially those of us in sub-Saharan Africa. So, being the most vulnerable. So considering issues like climate change, migration, political instability, etc., how can we democratize adequate nutritious food in our region?
That's a very good question and a very loaded question because, as you may imagine, there is a lot of disparities and a lot of inequalities in different populations. And speaking specifically for a country like Kenya, for example, you would definitely see the differences between like the north of Kenya with the central region and the capital region as well as the coast. And different parts of the country tend to have very different in qualities of food and also availability of the food. And I think one way to start democratizing food security within the region is definitely to ensure that everybody has a right to food. And what that means is, of course, ensuring that people have the capability to buy food if that's what, would be their source of food, or they have the capability to produce their own food in terms of ensuring that they can do agricultural activities, whether on a small scale, whether on a large scale, to ensure that they can be able to produce their own food for their better good in the long run. So that is one of the things that I would say is the first way to democratize food security.
No.
Yeah, so again, a second point to make here, Jinmi, is definitely to ensure that governments are adopting the correct policies. And the government of the day really speaks towards the availability of food in any type of community, whether it's in the West, the East, and the South of Africa. We've seen different kinds of things in terms of politics, in terms of the crisis, the climate change policies that have already been adopted, really affecting communities and households. And of course, it's important to first note that food security has been defined by the Food and Agriculture Organization as the availability, accessibility, the utilization, and the stability of food. But then again, for us to be able to democratize food security, we need to come up with ways where we can own up the definitions of food security depending on our different communities. Because again, there is what we call the food culture of different communities. For instance, in Kenya, once again, we have about 42 plus communities, and each of the communities have the different ways of consuming food. They have their own different food cultures. And this definition of food security by the FAO is good, but of course, does not have the ownership of the cultures of the people. It does not include, perhaps maybe people are actually food secure in wherever they are, but, they are consuming different types of food and different food components that might actually be making them food secure anyway. So that is one thing that you actually need. We actually need to ensure that governments and communities are coming together to redefine what is food security to them. Food security to them might maybe imply that perhaps, like for instance, the Maasai in Kenya, they consume lots of meat every year in, year out, and they consume the herbs that they have available wherever they are, because they are a nomadic community. So they keep on moving from one place to the other. And so food security at that point in time will mean what they have right there and then, whether it's meat, whether it's the herbs they will find that are growing wildly. So that needs to be redefined depending on a community, because the only way to break out from this vicious cycle of saying that we are hungry, is to actually go back to the root. What is actually happening on the ground? Understand different communities differently, and then tackle the problem from there. And I guess that is a point that the government also needs to incorporate within the policies that are adopted, because everyone needs to have a right to food. Everyone needs to have food accessible to them. And communities that are producing more food need to also step up in a way that they can be able to avail this food, perhaps food that is even going to waste, to communities that are struggling. Like we do have a crisis looming in the north of Kenya, in other parts of Sudan, in other parts of East Africa as well. And if some communities which already have ample food could agree and avail some sort of food that is actually going to waste, and maybe even sell it at a very low cost, even to these places which are actually undergoing famine and crisis, that could be one way of actually tackling the problem. But then again, there is the issue of, there is no money to buy the food because people are jobless. People do not have a way of even having a house under their, a roof under their head, really. So there are all these issues that loom in. So we need to make the food accessible to people. We also need to give them a way to purchase this food and a way to actually, incorporate agricultural activities within their own communities and empower them to an extent that they can be able to produce food for long periods of time. They can be able to save this food for a day that there would not be food, for a day where we would have maybe another pandemic in the future. Who knows? We might be in another crisis,
Exactly.
So these are all the kinds of things that we need to do as a people, and especially the policies that have been adopted by governments really need to change. Because I would hope to see a day where perhaps we are exchanging food between different countries within the continent. Maybe the cassava that is produced in Nigeria coming over to Kenya in lump sum, and we are exchanging different cultures of food, and we are exchanging different qualities of food, because the shift also needs to come from the fact that we are speaking about food security. We need also to speak about nutrition security.
Exactly.
It's not
just only about food, yeah.
Exactly. It's just not the amount of food you have in your household or in your country. It's the quality of that food,
Exactly.
Is it diversified? Is it just one, maybe one macro, maybe just one carbohydrate, or maybe one protein, or what is it that you have? So we need to shift our minds into nutrition security and incorporate it into food security. And that would be one of the biggest things that we can do to start democratizing food security among different countries within the African continent.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I mean, that was pretty profound. And I like the fact that you touched on not only just the food, but as well as the nutritious aspect of the food we consume. So, and you also mentioned that, we also need to plan, plan ahead. We need to be proactive because you never can tell. Maybe another 30 years, there could be another pandemic. We don't know about that at the moment. So the pandemic has had an adverse effect on incomes of millions of people, not only in Africa, but across the world, right? And then there are cases of chronic malnutrition because of reduced or, complete stop of income of so many households across Africa. So how can households access nutritious food in the face of increased rural poverty rates, poor rural infrastructures, loss of jobs, increasing cost of food, etc.?
Yeah, so that's a really complex situation as well, because malnutrition, when you speak about malnutrition across the African continent now, it's a double-edged sword. So look at it this way. On one hand, we have communities and infants and children stunting and having acute malnutrition and all these kind of things. And then on the other hand, we have people actually going into obesity and lots of communities within the urban settings actually are bearing the burden of obesity and non-communicable diseases because, again, they are malnourished, and the malnourishment they're having to deal with is due to the quality of the food that they are consuming. And because, of course, they do have the buying power, they feel that they can be able to consume whatever is available for them and whatever is available in the markets, right? So now for us to get to a point where we are tackling stunting, we are tackling acute malnutrition within different communities, again, we have to have all our hands on deck. So which means that with a growing number of children under the age of 5 who have stunted growth, meaning that they are too short for their age, or some of them might have lots of issues to do with edema, and of course the fact that it stems from their mother, whether this mother who gave birth actually has enough milk, enough breast milk to breastfeed them within the first 6 months of their life. In fact, you find that most mothers do not have that capacity, and so they introduce their children or their infants to solid foods at very young ages. One, because they might not have the ample milk because they are not getting enough nourishment, and two, of course, because they don't know any better. They think that of course the fact that they have a child, they would like to introduce them to whatever the food is available to them, So there are these things that come into play whereby we need to educate mothers first on proper nutrition, for them to take care of themselves. And then again, of course, to ensure that they can be able to take care of their infants. But then the looming issue is, of course, the poverty that they're experiencing because they do not have the money to buy food, to take care of themselves, and then later take care of their infants, right? So I think this is a trend that we need to come up with strategies between ourselves and even non-governmental organizations to ensure that we are able to provide food once again. It goes back to security. It goes back to talking about issues to do with nutrition security, education, agriculture, like social protection, providing for them water, sanitation, and all these kind of things. And in some communities, it's quite difficult because, with the movement, some of them are nomads. So with crisis and with political, issues, they have to move from one place to the other. So it's a bit difficult for them to be stable and be able to have a way where even if they were to start an agricultural activity in a certain community, then, that might not quite help them because when crisis looms, they will have to move their houses, right? So we can come up with solutions, for instance, like where we have things like greenhouses, or we have certain, guarded farms whereby, there's a certain company or a certain organization that comes up with a way where they can farm the food within the vicinity of these people, wherever they are moving around, and ensure that this food can get to them wherever they move, which is a bit difficult. It might sound a bit far-fetched, but this is one way to tackle things, because there is a lot of vast land. Like, I'm just thinking out loud about the northern of Kenya. There's a lot of land that is underutilized, and it seems as if it's a desert. But look at countries like Israel, which produces so much food, and yet, you know, the weather there is way even worse than what we may have in Kenya. So, like, we have all these excuses as individuals, as governments, as communities, as organizations, and whereby we also have this mindset where I would rather get a food handout from a non-governmental organization that has come to set up shop in Kenya every single month, every single week. I would rather have that than think ahead, think about the generation, that kind of thing. So for us to tackle the burden of undernutrition, there are several facets to look into. First is to ensure that we are providing the correct knowledge. We are providing the correct resources. We are providing the correct environment. We are reducing the cost of food for these people living in these areas, right? And once these things come into play, then we tackle the burden of nutrients, the burden of diseases for children who are under 5, who are faced with great issues in terms of malnutrition, in terms of sanitation, in terms of survival. Very few children survive between the 0 to 5 years. You know, there's what we call the first 1,000 days of life, and you find that there's a lot that goes into play. There's a lot that goes into play in terms of the diseases, in terms of you know, mixed feeding, whereby you find mothers are breastfeeding as well as giving solid foods because that is all they know, or that is what is available, right? So we provide that type of assistance for us to nurture the children and nurture the next generation. Otherwise, we will definitely have issues to do with cognition in early childhood. You know, we will have issues to do with height in early childhood, like have stunting, we have things to do with, you know, weight, different low weight for their age, you know, and this is what causes our vicious cycle, because it all stems from, you know, what the child was, you know, the culture, the type of culture they were introduced to. Like, say, for instance, yourself, I'm so sure that when you were born, you know, maybe your mom perhaps breastfed you and then started introducing you to some types of food. I don't know, maybe banana or whatever else it is that you got introduced to. But whatever you got introduced to as a child, sort of, you know, takes course for the types of food that you choose even in the future, because your parents were, you know, you are trained to eat. I don't know, jollof. I don't know what's your favorite food, but it really stems from what you're introduced to, and it shapes up what you actually become in the future, and the type of food that you consume, the food culture that you adopt, what you think is food to you, what's the definition of food, what is the definition of food security to you, you know? So if we don't tackle this, then we will have generations, you know, after generations seeking out handouts, not knowing exactly, you know, how to produce the food and that kind of thing. So we have to really do a lot of education, a lot of empowerment, especially in these communities, and especially right now when we have a pandemic. We need to have governments step up, you know, not just squander money, you know, just channel the money to the right directions, which again does not happen in our different countries, which is a bit sad, because you see money being channeled into things that infrastructure and all these kind of things. It's not bad to channel money to infrastructure and stability of economies and that kind of thing, but we are forgetting a very core part of living, which is food security. This is a very core part, because without it, there would not be people to build the economy. There would be no generation to actually build the economy in the future. You know, we will not have people who have cognitive health in a way, and cognitive capacities that, you know, they will be able to even perform well in schools, because that is another thing that happens in different communities in Africa. Children don't go to schools because they don't have enough food, right? People are going hungry. They won't go to school. And even if they go to school, they will not perform well because
they won't perform well, yeah.
That's the thing. So these are things that we need to tackle. We need to do a lot of education and empowerment within our different communities. And even as an individual, depending on whatever the capacity you have, and this is perhaps something that you already do, like empower people, ensure that they can be able to produce their own food, educate them, you know, chipping into that next generation and make a change out of that, you know. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I was having a discussion recently with a friend, and we touched on the impact of non-governmental organizations across different sectors of society, right? But since we're talking about food security, we're talking about nutrition right now. Yes, I mean, the idea of NGOs, the idea of donor organizations, I mean, it's laudable. It's making it, I mean, it's touching people's lives, actually. It's making a lot of positive impacts. And based on what you mentioned, I mean, just now, sometimes we could also over depend on the impact or activities of some of these NGOs. And then at the end of the day, it's further entrenching the dependency model or the dependency mindset of our people, of Africans, towards, I mean, these NGOs or donor organizations. So how can we, by we, I mean the people as well as government, right? How can we build food, I mean, sustainable food and nutritious and nutrition secure Africa based on, I mean, these activities?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, there are several measures that we can use towards building food security. And one of them, of course, I would go back again to education and literacy and changing the mindsets of people, to an extent that they can think that, yes, there's a way to become independent. There's a way to actually build with what you have. There's that aspect that in most countries we lack, that we are always looking for that external thing, that external resource that is going to come into our own different communities and make the change. Yet we are actually equipped with those kind of things. We do have the land, right? Because those external bodies will not bring the land to you. You have the land. They are coming to just ensure that, you know, they perhaps educate you, they perhaps give you the resources in terms of money, and maybe give you some food to cater for your hunger for that period of time. But we do have those resources. So we do need to do a lot of education and literacy and empowerment of communities to help them understand that they can actually make it on their own without having to rely on external governments or external organizations, you know. And that is one of the major things that we can do. And of course, ensuring that we are beginning agricultural activities as soon as people are empowered and they understand the way they can actually produce the food, then we can empower these communities to even diversify their crops, because it's not just the way you think about you want to go into farming and maybe you want to just go and plant maize, or you want to just go plant beans. Ensure that they can actually diversify the different crops, because that is how you gain nutrition security. Because it's not just planting maize, it's not just planting beans. Perhaps that land can also generate other crops. And excuse me for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
yeah. So I guess that's what I wanted to say in terms of crop diversification. That we need to ensure that the food available is actually a variety. We have people growing fruits, people growing different types of proteins, beans, the legumes, and that kind of thing. People growing maize at the same time. And it doesn't have to be on one piece of land. It can be, community A within that vicinity is growing this, community B is growing this, and then coming together, maybe forming a market to make these food crops available, and not just whisking away all the produce, all the good produce into external countries, into foreign countries, because that is what we tend to do. We produce food not for our own. Yeah. We want to produce that food to sell it in Europe or sell it in the US or wherever else, because that is what we think about. We want to earn more money yet, and live ourselves without anything, which is actually a very misconstrued way of thinking. And that is one of the things that we need to tackle as soon as possible, because most governments will definitely want to sell that produce for more, to external countries. Like we had this policy in Kenya, where they are allowing produce to the UK so easily, and they are leaving communities hungry in Kenya. And that is not the right way of looking at things if we are going to ever tackle food security, for sure. Yeah. And of course, the other thing would be to tackle climate change and climate change policies and water management, resource management, because that is another major thing that is going to affect us in the long run if we are not very careful about it. Yeah. So we need to have governments coming, and I don't know about Nigeria. Perhaps you guys are doing better than us, because we are not doing well with climate changes. We are not very conservative people, or we don't take care about things like even pollution in Kenya, because you have lots of exhausts in the air. We have lots of people burning trees for charcoal.
It happens here as well. It happens here.
Okay, so it's the same thing. So it's the same policies that we have.
Our realities aren't that. Different like that. We go through. Most of our challenges are similar, actually.
So that's the other thing. And excuse me, there's something that we need to do about even things to do with water management. And do you know, we keep on speaking about all these kind of things, like, food, water, shelter. These are basic clothing, basic things that will keep us in a vicious cycle, which is actually very annoying, because look at governments within Europe. Like, there's a lot of to do with conservation. There's a lot of green energy. Like, for instance, Portugal right now, it's all about green energy and the type of energy that we're using, solar energy, etc. We do have those resources, and we have that mindset, of course, even in our different African countries. But we are not doing as much as we need to do for us to be able to come to a place where we have conserved, we have stopped pollution. Because again, there's someone maybe in the government who is thinking, oh, you stop pollution, and then what? Maybe I'm not going to earn some sort of kickbacks, and there's no way I'm going to let this happen, or someone who actually is, running a non-governmental organization that is funded by X country, and they're earning so much money, and they're getting some kickbacks, they have some jobs, etc. It's never going to end if we never tackle it from that end. So it's like, we are talking about it right now. And trust me, in the next 10 years, perhaps we'll be at the same place, especially because of the pandemic anyway. But the one other thing that I would want to mention that we can do, whether the government cooperates or not, is in terms of the biofortification of food, and That's the thing. So because like we produce the food fine, but then it lacks the correct vitamins and minerals. It's not fortified with the correct vitamins and minerals for it to get even to that person who is in a low resource setting, you know. So things like flour, fortifying it with vitamin Bs, you know, and
vitamin A, different,
exactly. That is one major thing that we people who already, you say you want to go to farming, you want to go to do some sort of farming activity and agricultural activity. Think about whatever you're producing and how you can, of course, if it's gonna go through processing, think about how you can fortify it and
exactly.
And that is one of the things that is going to take us a long way, because like I mentioned before, nutrition security also comes into play. So if you cannot produce that food with that nutrient, ensure that it is, whatever you have is fortified for hidden hunger to end. Because hidden hunger, again, is another thing that even the WHO has mentioned, is like, you know, the deficiencies that we have. For instance, like, fine, we we are in Africa and we are, our sun is almost all year round, but like one deficiency that is looming right now of vitamin D, you know. And vitamin D3, usually, you know, like you would imagine that you're staying out in the sun and you're getting all the vitamin D3 that you need. But then again, you go and do a blood test and then you are deficient. And it presents in different ways in terms of feeling that you're tired, feeling that you're not energetic and that kind of thing. So that is one of the examples that I keep telling people, look, this is one of the ways that you can actually fortify food, you know, fortify the meal that you're producing, because it's one of the things that you can actually do to help communities and generations in the future. So in many words, that is one thing that we need to do, that biofortification of food available to us.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. I mean, I was going to mention two things, but you touched on the second already. That is fortification of food, because from your delivery, I like the fact that you placed emphasis on food production, which is agriculture, because these days you go online everywhere, it's agribusiness this, agribusiness that, funding for not even for agriculture, but for agribusiness activities or for agribusiness practitioners. That is fantastic. We are empowering one another, right? However, in my opinion, there cannot be agribusiness without agriculture. So yes, we need agribusiness to empower people economically, to increase income, to elevate the positions of women and youth in Africa. But we also need to ensure that we take adequate care of agriculture, because, I mean, we produce food, there's the use of land, use of water resources, there's the impact of climate change, there's a large, increasing insecurity, in some of our communities, right? And a lot of these insecurities actually comments from the rural areas. Those are the most vulnerable, regions of our societies. And however, these rural areas are where our food comes from. So we need to continue to sensitize our rural dwellers, protect them adequately, ensure that they have confidence to go on their farms, and know that nothing is going to happen to their wives or to their husbands or to their kids. So these are ways where we all need to, people and government, actually ensure that we come together and do things right. So to the last question, I got this last question from your page. You said that, can you boost your immune system with diet? And how do you actually balance immune system? Because I think from your page, I think you were against boosting immune system with diet and all. And we also just talked about fortification of food. So please shed more light on that.
Yeah, that is a great question. So the thing is, the immune system is quite complex, right? And of course, amid the COVID-19, we've seen lots of people and a renewed interest in boosting your immunity system because, come on, you need it, right?
Exactly.
And on a light note, people think that, your immune system is like, that Pac-Man game that you used to play, Pac-Man running through the maze, gobbling up all the dots, right? We think of our immune system as a Pac-Man game, like the more energy it has, the more dots it's going to gobble. But the thing is, the idea of boosting your immunity is actually, you don't want your immunity boosted. You don't want it to get to a place where you're saying that you're boosting your immunity because it's not even scientifically correct, right? Because the way your immune system works is that usually your body identifies things like infections or injuries. And for instance, when you get a cold, right, you present symptoms of maybe a fever or maybe you're sneezing out things because your body wants that infection out, right? It's fighting back towards whatever is attacking the system, right? And so all these kind of things that you hear, products saying that you can boost your immune system using A, B, C, D, E. Think about your immune system as this, as like your car, whereby you fuel it and you keep on fueling it every single other time whenever the fuel is low, right? It's not that every single time you fuel it, it gives your engine a higher capacity. It's pretty much you fueling it every single time, and you have to actually fuel it for your car to work anyway. So that is the thing that we need to think about. Our immune system is quite a complex, system, and we have acquired immunity and we have innate immunity, right? And this is not something that you can actually boost using different products, unless you perhaps maybe are deficient of these kind of nutrients and all these kind of things that you see on social media. So unless you go do a blood test and then your doctor tells you, hey, you are deficient of, this mineral, this, and this is actually working against your immunity. So it's not that, yourself just thinking out loud and thinking that, oh my God, there's COVID, I need to go take my vitamin C because I see everybody taking vitamin C and I think my immune system needs to be empowered to get to a place where I cannot get COVID at all. And vitamin C is going to help me with this. And that's not true, because it's not going to, the fact that you're taking a lot of vitamin C is not that you're actually boosting your immunity. Fine. Within the nutrition science field, there are those nutrients that support the immune system. And of course, this is, towards, of course, things like lifestyle changes, whereby you are able to, the thing we talked about here, eat a variety of food, right? Variety of food, whereby you find yourself, you're not, having hidden hunger, you're not deficient of the minerals and the vitamins that you actually need. So what you're doing is just supporting your body, and ensuring that you have the correct lifestyle habits that do not render you to, have a failing immunity or have, a way whereby your body cannot fight the infections properly. And this is, of course, even with habits such as stressing out on things, habits such as how much sleep you're getting. Are you going on a physical activity? So it's not that, consuming vitamin C or buying a certain supplement or buying a certain product that, says that it's going to boost your immunity, unless you're deficient. And that is another thing that we don't do as Africans. We do not go for tests. We don't go for general blood tests to see what is going on in our bodies unless we are feeling sick or we are feeling that, something is totally wrong. So unless you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you, hey, look, these are your results, right? You need to get more of this vitamin, whatever,
Yeah.
for you to be able to actually have a healthy, lifestyle. And this healthy lifestyle is pretty much only going to support your immune system and not extraordinarily, blow it up to a higher level that has never been heard of. The same way I talked about the car, like it's not like today when you fuel, today because you fuel there's a certain petrol station, which is different from what you're used to. It doesn't mean that your engine is just going to take you to the moon or whatever. It's just, you're just still going to be on the road. It's just a new petrol same thing. So that's what we need to think about, because we cannot boost it way more, because we have what we have as inborn immunity, and we have what we have acquired immunity from the diseases that we might have gone through, and we became immune because we've got some antibodies. And that's the thing with even COVID, getting the vaccine, allows you that, your body has antibodies enough for you to be able to fight just in case you got COVID, So that's the thing that we need to understand. And sorry to burst people's bubbles, but drinking the concoctions, taking all these drugs that people are selling you at a huge price, that's me, that it's not scientifically proven. It's not a random controlled trial that has been done and has been seen to boost your immunity. Of course, consuming a variety of food, exercising, going for those walks, staying in sunlight, these are things that will help you and support you, for wholeness. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So, okay, for me, prior to COVID, I do most of my cooking. I eat out sometimes, but most times I do my cooking. And just as you mentioned earlier, that people's eating habits or diet stems from their background, the kind of food or meals they've been introduced to. And it also touched on another conversation I had some way back actually, about high blood pressure, that some of these things are actually as a habit of nutrition from childhood nutrition. So when they say, okay, it's hereditary, it's not like it's hereditary, it's in the genes like that, but the grandparents brought up people's parents based on, they expose them to a particular type of food. So maybe they do a lot of red meat, a lot of alcohol once they get to their teenage years and all those kind of things. So they also transfer these habits across generations. So that's why sometimes they say high blood pressure or some other diseases are hereditary. So for me, most mornings, right, I take like maybe a shot of bitter leaf juice. Bitter leaf, right?
Yeah.
So I take a shot of bitter leaf juice. So I'm used to things like that. I eat a lot of vegetables.
Yeah.
So when I saw your post, I was thinking, okay, are you now telling me that some of these things I'm used to, that it's not going to help my immunity? Are you saying it's not going to make me stronger? And all those kind of things, because I'm used to it. So I believe that taking all these things, they are natural, and I grow these vegetables, right? So I know the history. Most of the vegetables, virtually all of them, don't even have artificial pesticide or herbicides, nothing whatsoever. So they're like grains directly from nature. So in my mind, I always feel like, okay, I'm happy that, okay, I'm taking these things that are natural, that make me feel stronger and healthier. So you actually did burst the bubble.
I'm so sorry about that, but we cannot actually be in control of how our immunity behaves. Really, that's one thing we need to understand. And as much as we have great habits that are working for you, you're consuming a balanced and variety of food, really, and that is what is going to support you. It's not that it's going to, the immunity that possibly you had is not like going to go way above COVID.
Yeah.
Because that is what they thought. But that's the thing we need. It's very, very crucial to understand food and how it works in your body, because the fact that you're consuming a shot of, a feel-good drink in the morning.
Bitter leaf juice.
Bitter leaf juice.
Not a shot of alcohol. No, it's bitter leaf juice.
Yeah, so I mean, you're just improving, the absorption of the nutrients in those bitter leaves, really, like it's not that this is going to go towards boosting your immunity or making it better. I hope that makes it clear, because the immune system is a very complex thing to understand. And of course, it depends from one person to the other, and the type of diseases that you've had, the places that you might have stayed that caused you to have a certain immunity to maybe certain diseases and that kind of thing. And that is something that we have to get into our heads, that food is really fuel to your body, because your body fuels through the macronutrients, the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fats, and the amount of the food that you consume actually, fuels your body every single day. Again, think about your body as an engine, that requires fuel every single day, right? And so if you not fuel it correctly every single day, then you stand at a chance of either, you're not well nourished, or maybe because you're not consuming a variety of the food, then you get these deficiencies. And you cannot just think that you have a deficiency without knowing the reality, without actually go do that blood test, go do a general checkup with a general practitioner, really, and ask them to take your vitals. Get to know the exact story about yourself, not just using anecdotal evidence on social media. And checking out people's ways and how they're saying, oh my God, this boosted me. Oh my God, this helped me. It might not be for you.
True.
Yeah. I mean, and simply because you're consuming something and you think that, oh, you're feeling so good, you're thinking, oh my God, it's working so well into my system. Yet.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nduta Wambura. I mean, anytime you speak, I've listened to you speak several times, and you blow our minds regularly. Often, anytime we hear you speak, and I'm sure our viewers would have their mindset or their views about nutrition and immune boosters or immunity and all, as well as food security issues, right? Influence from these conversations. And I'm confident of the fact that even years to come, this particular conversation will still be relevant, not only amongst practitioners, but also even for students or just anybody that wants to know more about nutrition, food security, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. So thank you very much once again, Nduta, and do have, enjoy the rest of your day.
I will. Thank you so much for inviting me in this space. And I hope to have more conversations maybe in the future. We'll see. But
definitely. Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.